Hey guys, Big Dave at my house in Morro Bay. Another beautiful day. I just tried to hop in the water, trying to learn to surf. I'm really pathetic, but I'm trying. It's time for a Unit 2 review. So, again, type out your vocabulary for me, type out your study guide, questions and answers, and type out the essay. So let's go through some of this stuff. The first three questions are from your textbook. The first question you can find around page 370, 371 or 2. Second question about Asia, about page 320, 322, 323. The third one on agricultural evolution, about page 308, 310, right in that ballpark. So let's do the additional hints part. This is the part you're going to type out for me, questions and answers also. What is nomadic herding? That's the controlled movement of people and domesticated animals over large areas. Where I saw this was when I was in Israel and the country of Jordan also. I saw the Bedouins involved in nomadic herding. The Green Revolution is a term that refers to an increase in agricultural technology. It refers to things like pesticides and herbicides, better strains of crops, mechanization. The Green Revolution was important in the late 50s and into the 1960s and probably helped prevent starvation in many third world regions. It led to a dramatic increase in the production of rice and wheat. So an advancement in the agricultural sector, increased technology in agriculture, the Green Revolution. Shifting agriculture is when people move from location to location to farm. I think of slash and burn like in the Amazon or equatorial Africa, where groups slash and burn a few acres and then they plant crops. Usually soils in tropical regions aren't great for long-term agriculture, so then they move on, they slash and burn some more crops. Many years ago, these same, say, indigenous groups in the Amazon would let that land that they had farmed, leave it alone for 25, 30 years so the soils could regenerate, then they may come back to those plots again. These days, it tends not to happen. They usually put their animals out on that land they farm, and that really denigrates the soil. Let's see here. Nowhere in the world economically developed countries are located, so basically north of the equator. Other than, of course, let's see, Australia, New Zealand would be south of the equator. Developed countries or regions, United States, Canada, Western Europe, Israel's developed. Let's see, Japan, South Korea, Singapore would all be really good examples of economically developed countries or regions. That's the first world, economically developed. What does the von Thunen model tell us about the pattern of farmland? So that model argued that agricultural intensity would decrease away from a central market city. In other words, near the market city, you would grow perishable things or produce perishable products like dairy products, fruits and vegetables. The next ring out would be field crops, wheat, barley, potatoes. Furthest from the market city would be the grazing of animals. This model isn't as relevant anymore because we have refrigerated cargo trucks, so we can transport fruits and vegetables over longer distances compared to when this model was actually developed. What are some distinctions between developed and underdeveloped countries? Per capita income, higher in the first world, developed countries. Percentage of people living on farms is higher in third world countries, economically underdeveloped countries. Productivity per worker is higher in developed countries, Japan, United States, obviously. Population growth rates are higher in the underdeveloped world. Infrastructure is better in the rich nations, roads, highways, sewers, electrical grids, and so on. Rostow's model, there are 5 stages. W. Rostow was writing in the 1950s, and he called for economic development through trade, and he believed capitalism was the route to economic development. So he said that countries generally go through 5 predictable stages. Traditional societies, number 1. This would be countries today like Haiti, some African countries that are extremely poor, where there's low levels of technology, subsistence agriculture, growing just enough to survive. Society is usually conservative, resistant to change. Political power is usually in the hands of an autocratic leader supported by elites. Second stage is called preconditions for takeoff, where some third world countries may be. This argues you need innovative leaders and outside investment to spur economic activities, ideally using the country's resource base. Okay, the third stage would be the takeoff stage, where Rostow calls for sustained economic growth. The emphasis here is on building a manufacturing base, correct? A strong manufacturing base. Number 4 is the drive to maturity, where Rostow says there should be a diversification of the economy. Industry becomes more technologically complex. Labor force is more skilled and specialized. And number 5 is probably where we are for sure, the age of mass consumption. The service sector becomes more important. Our standard of living is well above our basic needs. More attention to social welfare. So the 5 stages again. You have the traditional society, preconditions for takeoff, the takeoff stage, drive to maturity, and the age of mass consumption. If you could give me a couple sentences about each, that would be great. What is the difference between a nation and a state? The nation is the people. The state is a land with definite boundaries. What is a commitment or allegiance to a single country called? That's nationalism. Know the what factors influence industrial location in a commercial economy. We have a commercial economy for the most part in the United States. Supply and demand ideally would determine industrial location, where you're going to put your business or your factory. Fourth world refers to the poorest of the very poor countries. First world's the rich. Second world's a term no longer used to apply, but used to describe the Soviet Union and the Eastern European countries under their control. Third world are the economically underdeveloped countries. Fourth world, poorest of the very poor, Haiti and many countries in Africa. Cottage industry refers to home-based manufacturing. The 4 sectors of the economy. Okay, different parts of the economy can be separated out, and one way to do this is in different sectors. So I'll try this. One sector is called the primary sector. It's the extractive sector. You're taking from the earth. Mining, fishing, agriculture, the timber industry. The second sector is called the secondary sector. That's manufacturing. You take those raw materials, turn them into finished products. The third stage would be the tertiary stage. You could call it the service sector also if you want. Ideally in this sector, people provide services for people who are extracting or manufacturing. It might be your state farm agent. It could be flight attendants. It could be retail. It could be people in the restaurant industry. Okay, and the 4th stage, let's call it the information sector, which has just boomed and gone crazy in recent years. So primary, secondary, tertiary, and information. And tell me what they are. And one sentence would be fine for each of the sectors. What was the distribution of industry prior to the Industrial Revolution? Spread out, home-based. The term comparative advantage. This is where some countries or regions have distinct advantages over others in the production of certain products. So I think of low-wage countries like Mexico or Honduras or Bangladesh have a distinct advantage because of their low wages being paid over countries like the United States. The United States these days, maybe Kentucky or Tennessee, has some comparative advantage over the state of Michigan in the production of automobiles. And I know that Toyota and Nissan have moved into those states, maybe because wages are cheaper there, or they're less likely to unionize. What else do we have here? What are some major urban problems in the United States? Number 1, I think, is homelessness, substandard housing, slums, income distribution, where you have a few rich and some in the middle, and more it seems like poor in some of our bigger cities. Know the importance of manufacturing as a percentage of the U.S. economy. It has been declining. Off the top of my head, I'm going to guess it's 12% manufacturing as a percentage of the U.S. Economy. You can look that number up. I think I'm probably close. Understand the term neo-colonialism. That's when a more powerful nation, like the United States, exerts economic and political control over a less powerful nation. Latin American nations have complained of this over the years, that the United States has been exerting power over many of those countries as a result of the debt issue, the large amount of money that many Latin American countries owe to the United States, and other international lending institutions, many of which are controlled by the United States. What determines the price of products in a planned economy? The government. Commercial agriculture is associated with the developed world. Think of the San Joaquin Valley. Think of the Salinas Valley. That's commercial agriculture, agribusiness. The great leap forward was 1958, when Chairman Mao tried to move from socialism to a pure form of communism in the agricultural sector. He created these large communes of maybe 4,000 families that were extremely mechanized, and people would march out, communally build irrigation ditches and schools and so forth. It was a failure. The Chinese government did blame a drought, but it resulted in mass starvation, even reports of cannibalism. The communal rules relaxed by the early 60s, and many of the communes were broken back up into smaller collective farms. Sovkhoz refers to a state farm. That term, Sovkhoz, was used when there was a Soviet Union. They still have these large farms. They've changed names now, but a Sovkhoz was a large farm where workers were generally paid by the hour, heavily mechanized, focused just on one or two crops, maybe wheat or potatoes, something like that. The Heartland Theory. Well, let's do that. The Heartland Theory was developed by an English geographer named Mackinder. And he was writing, let me check my notes when he was writing about that stuff. This was a while ago. Early 1900s. That makes sense to me. And he argued that the source of power in the world was Eurasia. And basically, he argued whoever controlled Eurasia controlled the heartland. And from there, you could launch a campaign of world conquest. He says from the heartland, you'd move out and take over the countries surrounding Eurasia on the margins. We're talking about places like Western Europe, India, China, Southeast Asia. Once you conquer those countries, you annex their navies and you move out and conquer the rest of the world. So he argued whoever controls the heartland commands the world, right? And if you control the world island, he called Eurasia. So who controls the heartland controls the world island. And if you control the world island, you then command the world. He probably underestimated the future influence of air power and things like that. The Rimland theory was the early 1940s, and it was an American named Spikeman developed this. And he argued that much of the power of the world wasn't in Central Asia and Eurasia because it's just wasteland. He said the real power is in what he called that inner crescent, that area surrounding Eurasia. And he says if you control that inner crescent, you would control the heartland, you would control Eurasia, and therefore you have the ability to control the whole world. So he called it the rimland, that inner crescent, that area that surrounds Eurasia. Again, that would be China and India and Japan and Western Europe. Okay, what else do we got here? Oh, Ratzel. Oh, this is interesting stuff here. Ratzel was a German geographer, and it's believed that some of his ideas may have influenced Adolf Hitler. He was writing in the late 1800s about something called an organic state. He was influenced by Charles Darwin. He said a state is like an organism, and it has a biological need for growth in order to remain healthy. He said grow or die. The countries are like plants and people. They do not do well in the desert and polar areas. He says countries are in an endless struggle for space. And he said the most powerful nation can claim the largest spaces. Do you see how that might be dangerous and how it might have influenced Adolf Hitler? Squatter settlements these are like substandard housing that surrounds usually large urban cities in the third world in particular. So people come from the countryside and they just kind of show up and they take over unoccupied land and they build their houses out of scavenged materials. You may not have electricity, you may not have running water, you may not have sewers. The domino theory was Admiral Arthur Radford, and Radford influenced probably Lyndon Johnson during the Vietnam era, and probably Ronald Reagan, I would say, during the era that we were so involved in Central America. And basically what he was arguing is that, like for Central America, if Nicaragua fell to communism, then El Salvador would fall, Honduras would fall, Guatemala would fall, Mexico would fall, and so on. Countries like dominoes, they go just like that. Your essay. So give me, a page and a half type, no more than 2, please. Give me 4 sources. I can be one. Your book can be another. Give me 2 more sources. The gap in living standards between the developed and underdeveloped world has been increasing. What factors can be taken to reverse this trend? Debt relief is one thing I'd like you to talk about. The third world owes the developed world probably $4 trillion right now. And they struggle to pay even the interest on the debt, let alone the principal. So maybe some people talked about debt for equity swaps, where governments or organizations like the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, environmental organizations can buy out a portion of the debt, and maybe you can leave part of the rainforest intact, something like that, as a national park. So debt for equity swaps, just flat out debt relief. Some of this debt is unrepayable anyways. By reducing the debt, it may free up more money for countries to develop, for schools and hospitals and roads. Population control is another thought. This is kind of controversial, but the general thinking is third world countries have such high population growth rates that it's hard to provide enough jobs for everybody coming into the workplace each year. Hard to provide enough schools and hospitals, roads. So population control efforts. Now, you don't have to agree with that, but mention it and give me your view on it, okay? Village banks or micro banks. I think this is a great idea. This is where you loan money to poor people at the bottom to start small businesses, and then they do better through time, hopefully. Bank of Seoul, the Grameen Bank, these have been used in various countries where say you got 10 people, 10 families, you give them each $1,000, right, to start a small business. Let's say one person didn't repay their loan, the other 9 people are responsible. I believe they found the repayment rate on these loans is really high compared to giving money to corrupt dictators or authoritarian governments where that money never reaches the grassroots. So, and somebody talked about increase in the outreach of groups like the Peace Corps, some kind of national service programs. Let's say you turn 18 and everybody has to do a year of national service, maybe in our country, or maybe in an African country, or maybe the military if you're so inclined. So you may disagree with that, but at least list those 4 and tell me what you think about them. So debt relief, population control efforts in the third world, village banks or micro banks when you look them up, and maybe an increase in some kind of national service like the Peace Corps. So good luck on all this stuff. I hope it goes well for you. Big Dave out.